Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm Brandon Thurston, broadcasting live and on demand from Buffalo, New York. Today is Sunday, March 26th, 2023. We're a week away from Wrestlemania, and joining us, as usual, is the Ernie Johnson of Wrestlenomics, the bow tie wearing Chris Gullo. Hello.
I prefer the Ernie Johnson comparison more than when you say Dr. Carlson. So thank you for that.
Well, there's many major television stars who wear a bow tie. Who you may be paying tribute to. It's completely speculative.
Ernie Johnson. There we go.
Okay.
I like that one.
Okay. And I think fresh off his skiing trip, that was actually 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
No, that was last week. That was last week, Brandon. Yes, no. The skiing season in the East is pretty much wrapped up. Yeah, out in the Rockies in the Sierra Nevada, they'll be skiing until May.
Where did you ski? Sure. Are there mountains? This was not far away from where you live?
Yeah. I mean, it depends on your far away. It's about 3 hours north of where I live. In New Hampshire and Maine is primarily where I ski.
There's mountains up there?
Oh, yeah. There's, not quite as large as, like, the big resorts, like, out in the Rockies, like Steamboat Springs or Jackson Hole or those places, but pretty sizable outside of that area, like pretty sizable mountains to ski. And there's a bunch of them too. It's one of the perks of living in New England is that's excellent for skiing.
Okay. I've never skied in my life. Have you ever skied, Gall?
Yeah, I tried it once.
I'm imagining you now on some skis, and this is a pretty thought.
I did not like it. I did try to snowboarding a little bit. We have some pretty decent places.
Yeah, you guys have hills out there.
Yeah, so yeah.
I didn't start skiing until I was an adult. I think I didn't ski until I was like 21. And a lot of people start as children, which helps a lot, I think. I love skiing. I have a blast doing it. So
any Gwyneth Paltrow incidents? Did you run over anybody and cause them?
2 weeks ago, I was at Sunday River in Western Maine, and I crushed somebody on the trail. Like,
really?
I don't think I wasn't injured. I don't think this person was injured, but they were like going very slow, and they appeared to be under control. And I was going much fast. No, I was going pretty fast, but it was also on a green trail. So there's a limit to how fast you can go on a trail like that. And I was going like straight in towards the very left end of the trail, which is kind of what you're supposed to do. If someone's going slow, you kind of give them a wide lane and you go past them on the left, just like you're driving on the highway. And this person just decided to swerve like way too far to the left. So they were going to come into my lane. And I was like, look out, look out, look out. And then I just plowed into them. I knocked my skis off, knocked their skis off their feet. But
this sounds like a dangerous activity. Like John Denver died.
It's
skiing,
very dangerous.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not very dangerous. I'm a pretty risk averse person. Like I'm afraid of like a lot of like
Sonny Bono
danger risks.
Yeah,
like
Sonny Bono.
Didn't they both die skiing in like a short time apart?
Well, what's her name? Wasn't there an actress who died? Like she got in a skiing accident and then she was like on life support for like a decent amount of time and then she died. I think it was a famous actress. It might have been a famous model. It was probably like 10 years ago, maybe further back. But I don't think skiing is that dangerous. If you have control, if you know how to brake and you know how to be under control, you can pretty much ski anywhere without too much risk. It's like obviously there's backcountry skiing and untrailed skiing, which are a can of worms, but I don't know. I like it. I recommend
on average 42 deaths a year, so that's higher than zero. So
yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that are high risk and may harm your health, we have some Vince McMahon to talk about today. But also, if you want to participate and contribute a super chat and ask a question, we will take your question with the super chat if you're watching live on YouTube. Also, remember to like, share, subscribe. It helps people find this video. But we'll start with the filing that came out yesterday evening. These always come out after the close of the market. An 8K filing. And that means WWE has to report something that is material to their business that they should let investors know about. So this came out yesterday, Friday, right? No, it came out Friday, so not yesterday. Friday afternoon. Today is Sunday. And WWE reported that on March 20th, which was Monday, right? So they're reporting on an action that happened on Monday. WWE entered into a reimbursement agreement with Vincent K. McMahon, the company's executive chairman, director, and controlling stockholder. The agreement provides that Mr. McMahon will pay the company approximately $17.4 million to reimburse the company for the costs that have been incurred and paid by the company and or its subsidiaries through January 31st of this year in connection with and or arising from the investigation conducted by a special committee of the company's board of directors related revisions to the company's financial statements and other related matters. Such payment was made on March 23rd. That is Thursday. The agreement further provides that McMahon will also review in good faith and reimburse the company for any additional costs incurred after that point. The agreement also includes a release of Mr. McMahon by the company regarding the recovery of the costs described above, and a release of the company by Mr. McMahon regarding the investigation related matters described above. That last paragraph is maybe a little bit ambiguous to me, but in any case, this investigation that's been happening since I think this investigation started in March or April of last year into the sexual misconduct allegations against Vince McMahon and against John Laurinaitis. And we've seen some details in WWE's disclosures about how much this investigation has cost. WWE reported in its February, and in its most recent earnings release, that there was $21.7 million of expenses related to the special committee investigation, and that Vince had agreed to pay, net of any insurance proceeds, had agreed to pay the expenses for that. So maybe that's accounting for the difference. Vince paying $17.4 million personally for the investigation, which they have disclosed in the entire year of 2022, which is the entirety. It took place entirely in the calendar year, probably from April to November. They say they concluded the investigation in November, and they're saying that it cost $21.7 million. So maybe a few $1 million, about $4 million of that was covered by insurance, and the rest apparently being paid by Vince personally. Does that sound like a lot of money for an investigation? I know they had a special law firm that they hired to help them with this investigation, but somebody did raise to me, isn't that a lot of money for an investigation? And I said, I don't know. Maybe not though.
There's also we don't know how much time this really occupied the board of directors, and those people.
We know in a calendar space, but we don't know like in terms of hours or something like that.
Those people were probably compensated for whatever time they spent doing that. I don't know that. I mean, this was a major story. It was obviously a major threat to their business. Vince resigned pretty quickly after it happened, so obviously he's back now. But I think they obviously took it very seriously. And that's probably reflected in how much money they spent to investigate it.
And
plus Vince was going to pay them back a bunch of money. So does it really matter if Vince is going to pay them back? Spare no expense.
What do you mean?
Because Vince paid the company back, reimbursed them, correct?
Yeah, that's what this is reporting. That he's paid $17.4 million.
Right. So
to the company.
if I'm running the investigation on this guy, and I'm like, well, he's going to reimburse us, and he's
so who cares how much we spend?
Billionaire. We're going to spare no expense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would keep in mind, like, when we're talking about like how much money Vince has, much of that money is not liquid. It's overwhelming. I believe overwhelmingly his net worth is in his stock, which he has to be careful about liquidating, and only on rare occasion has he liquidated a large part of it, including for when he was getting paid for the XFL.
When we talk about his net worth, we're not talking about a Scrooge McDuck scenario where he has a swimming pool full of gold that he can swim through, and that's his $3 billion or whatever his net worth is right now at the moment.
And I would suggest in terms of like cash flow, he had to take out a loan with Morgan Stanley, a margin loan against his shares after the XFL went bankrupt. So I would think Vince is not necessarily, yes, he's a billionaire on paper. He's not necessarily like cash rich compared to maybe some other very wealthy people. Am I in a strong delay here?
No, no.
Okay. So, and some background for this. In December, there was a letter that was written by the board. This was part of the disclosures that came out in January this year when Vince made his return. And we got 3 letters. One was from the board to Vince, where they were writing together as a board in response to Vince McMahon, and basically telling him, you owe us money for this. We've received a demand letter from shareholders saying that we should sue you for the cost of this investigation. So rather than that, why don't you sign an agreement saying you won't come back to the company and we won't sue you over it? So what does the letter actually say? The attached draft letter is an agreement that the board will not agree to the shareholder demand letter that the company files suit against you on the conditions that you confirm your commitment to repay all of the investigation-related expenses incurred by the company and that you agree not to serve as an officer, director, or employee of the company during the pendency of government investigations. Those conditions in the draft letter agreement reflecting such conditions were unanimously approved by the board prior to receiving your December 30 letter and reaffirmed, yada, yada. So, this was part of the hostage negotiation, if you will, between WWE's board and Vince McMahon, where Vince was saying, I'm coming back to the company and I'm not going to let you make any TV deal or make any company transaction until I'm back in the company and I have the power to do it, and I'm going to do it whether you like it or not. And this was the board's attempt to try to negotiate with them, saying, hey, we've received a shareholder demand letter. We don't know more about that, by the way, other than the board's reference to that shareholder demand letter. And we don't know much about the government investigations that the board makes reference to in this letter either, beyond maybe some Wall Street reports that have allusions to it. But this was part of the negotiation that ultimately resulted in Vince forcing his way back into the company in January.
I mean, we know Vince got what he wanted.
Yes.
He got back into power. So obviously, whatever.
Does he have everything that he wants yet, though?
I mean, I think I'm in the belief that we're seeing him make a soft play back into creative control of the company. He's taking little baby steps to gradually
Will there be
bring
reports?
himself.
Well, by the time we talk again, it'll be a week from now. One night of WrestleMania will be in the books. Will there be reports at that point for us to talk about on Sunday morning about Vince McMahon's presence at SoFi Stadium?
I think there's a non-zero chance that Vince comes out during WrestleMania.
I think that's less likely, but I think it's
Vince.
Pretty likely that he'll be there in the back at least.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you don't think Vince will come out at WrestleMania and he'll get a ovation from the crowd, which is what he wants. And maybe he doesn't even say anything. Maybe he just comes out, maybe he says thank you, but then just turns around and walks back away. And then we get a report a few hours later just saying, Vince just wanted to come out in front of the audience. He wasn't backstage. He wasn't wearing a headset. Did you see he was wearing a mustache? Isn't that wacky? We'll get that, and then people will probably move on and be like, "Oh, come on, he wasn't really making any decisions." Mm-hmm. Or if he was making decisions, he was making creative decisions that were bad, and the good decisions that we liked were made by Triple H.
Yeah, I think I would be surprised. I think it's a story if there aren't reports that he's there, and it's a story either way. But I think I would be surprised if he's not present in some capacity. You can make the justification, or at least the excuse that, well, he's there. I mean, it's WrestleMania, and there's so many business partners, potential suitors, and TV
he's
partners. He's
in Los Angeles with all the television people.
There's an important reason for him to be there because he's the one who's so involved with the talks of a sale. So why wouldn't he be there? But I do continue to believe that he's being careful here and making a slow roll towards coming back to the company. And I think once a TV deal and or a company transaction is out of the way and his presence does not affect those negotiations, I think then the path is clear for him to make more of a return to creative without causing problems. So I've seen by the summer or something like that.
Make more of a public return to creative.
Yeah, I think I tend to think, is he involved in the creative now? maybe in some respects, I don't believe he's involved in any meetings, any creative meetings or anything like that. He may be having conversations with Paul Levesque. Yet on the other hand, I question like what really is the relationship between Paul Levesque and Vince McMahon. So
Well, Paul Levesque has told us. I guess it's possibly that he's lying, but it doesn't seem like something that you would lie about. Like he's told us that he's talks with Vince about how to run the company. So we know that that's not like a mystery. It's more of is Vince making key creative decisions? Is he changing things backstage? Is he ordering pre-tapes because somebody used the word wrestling,
use the word wrestling,
as was reported?
and
this
how
past
much
week?
of things like that could just be happening to be like, oh, Vince is over there on the horizon. We better not piss him off. We better like
Well-
make sure we do things in a way that doesn't raise his ire and aggravate him, and lead to his further comeback.
I've been of the belief that I haven't noticed a gigantic shift in like the tone of WWE since Triple H officially took over. I think a lot of it, Vince's fingerprints are still all over the product, and that is not necessarily because Vince is running creative or Vince is ripping up scripts and rewriting things. I think that there's a writing staff, and in some cases Triple H is one of these people as well, but there's a writing staff and there's people like Bruce Pritchard whose careers are writing for Vince, and their presentation of wrestling is what Vince wants. So yeah, when somebody calls Johnny Gargano Johnny Gardenome, does that seem like a Vince thing? Yeah. Does that mean that Vince is the person who wrote it? No, it just means that somebody who usually writes for Vince is also still writing the show. And so they're going to write what they know and what they've done in the past, which is to write for Vince. And so his influence has always been over the product and always over the Raw and SmackDown shows, even if he has totally, absolutely no input whatsoever on the shows, just because the experience that a lot of these people that are writing the show have is working underneath Vince McMahon. So his influence is going to be on the company, forever.
I think Vince McMahon might be secretly booking AEW Dynamite and Rampage sometimes even.
Vince's. I was going to actually add, Brandon, that Vince's influence is over all of wrestling.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think some referee. I think
There,
Nick
yeah,
Patrick's
yeah, Nick Patrick. That was his conspiracy theory. Yeah, man.
Yes,
It's all at work, man.
Yeah, we won't entertain that anymore. But it's just to throw that out there. Speaking of WrestleMania, ticket update from WrestleTix. Tickets distributed. Night 1 is at over 62,000. Night 2 is just under 63,000 as of, what is this, Wednesday? The 23rd, Thursday. So, how does that compare to where WrestleMania was at about the same point last year? So I got as close as I can to the WrestleTix updates of last year. So WrestleMania last year was on the 2nd and the 3rd. WrestleMania this year is on the 1st and the 2nd. So WrestleMania is taking place one day later last year. So it's taking place one day earlier this year. Anyway, so I got estimates. We don't have this exactly matched up right, but we have estimates from last year on March 24th for day 1, last year on March 28th for day 2. And suffice to say, it's a little bit lower last year at about the same point. At about the same point last year, day 1 is at 61,000, day 2 is at 60,000, which again is lower than where it's at now. Day 1 is at 62,000, day 1 is at 63,000. So on pace, I would say it's fair to say on pace to out tickets distributed last year's tickets distributed. So that's where that's at. SoFi Stadium is operated by a private company when I looked. So I don't know if there's going to be any public records requests we can make to clarify how many tickets were really sold. Maybe there's some city things, some local government things, but I don't expect to have an obvious answer. But we will have an answer in terms of WWE's attendance reports will give us a range within which the paid attendance must have fallen if they continue to break out. Here's our average with WrestleMania, here's our average without WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can get Stan Kroenke to leak it to us since he's big enemies of Vince McMahon and he owns the stadium. But we talked about this, I think, last week, where it didn't really make sense to me that, because when we talked last week, this is before the update from WrestleTix.
Yes.
It looked like WrestleMania
I
this
did
year
not.
was
I did not do what I should have done. Is try to find a number that is as close as possible in the same number of days away from WrestleMania.
right. But we talked a little bit about how it was a little bit strange that WrestleMania this year seemed to be a little bit behind WrestleMania last year, given the ticket selling trends across the company are much higher this year than they were last year. And so this latest update makes a lot of sense in kind of rectifying that. I was going to ask, is there any significance at all to the 2 days having about the same tickets distributed? Is that Can we read anything into that as far as is night one a better night for drawing naturally because it's a Saturday night as opposed to a Sunday night? We really only, I think, like for the now they've clarified some of this in the last few days, but I think kind of the only thing we really knew about the card heading into a few days ago was that night two was going to have Cody versus Roman Reigns, which everyone figured because that's the biggest match and that's closest to night two. And night one was going to have, the rumor was it was going to be Charlotte versus Rhea closing it, but I don't even think WWE announced that being official. So we didn't really know that much about the difference in the cards, except that Reigns and Rhodes would be on night two as opposed to night one.
Yeah, according
So
to Wikipedia, it's Reigns and Rhodes night two, and the only matches that have been explicitly announced other than that is for night one: Austin Theory and John Cena, Seth Rollins and Logan Paul. There are obviously a lot of other matches that are announced, but none of them have nights designated yet.
I think Cena and Logan Paul are big enough draws to kind of have that ticket number be equal to night two.
right, but we just found out that Cena's wrestling night one,
Yeah.
like on Friday, right?
I think people expect it because you got Austin last year in night one. I think people expect a big name on night one.
All right, so yeah, so does Austin wrestling in night one create a precedent where people expect something like that to happen on night one again? That's true.
I think not clearly. So to be clear, like so last year, and I think it ends up. We have another slide that I'll check on this, but night one ends up being slightly bigger than night two, and this year night two is the one that's slightly bigger.
Right, but I guess they're about even. I guess if you were asking me this, I would say there's no significance between the two nights being similar. I don't think it kind of proves someone is a draw, someone's not a draw. I think there might be something too. I think maybe Saturday is a better night for drawing because it's Saturday, and if you're flying in for WrestleMania weekends, maybe you think about being able to fly out Sunday instead of flying out Monday. Maybe.
Okay, I'm sorry. Night two last year was about 1,000 higher.
We've been over this. I think we talk. I'm having a total Mandela effect with the night one last year. I swear night one was higher last year, and it was announced. Night two was announced as being higher, and then everyone talked about how night one was actually higher, and that was something that we talked about for months afterwards. And now all of a sudden, night two is higher than night one last year.
That's what I have in the slide. So I'm going to look directly at the WrestleTix spreadsheet right now, and April 3rd.
I believe WrestleTix has night two higher being now, but I swear I'm having a Mandela effect. This is a Berenstein versus Berenstain Bears moment for me.
Night two, that is just over 1,000 higher than night one last year, and it's less. It's only a few hundred difference at this point,
right?
For this year's WrestleMania.
Realistically, both nights should be the same because you imagine a majority of people that are interested in going in night one are interested in going to night two. If people are flying in, they're going to go to both nights of WrestleMania. So there really shouldn't be that big of a difference, logically. And if we also accept that like the main draw of the event is WrestleMania and the brand name and the running a big stadium and all of those things, the individual matches are less likely to sway one person from going to one night and not the other. It's all about the WrestleMania experience.
So the just looking at the tickets distributed counts for this year's events around WrestleMania weekend versus last year, and everything is up. Everything, the arena events, let's call them, the ones that aren't the WrestleMania Stadium events, are all significantly higher already than their final numbers last year. Ring of Honor Supercard of Honor on Friday. Did I not like put this in chronological order? I guess I didn't. So Supercard of Honor, which is on Friday, had 3,900. Or I'm sorry, had just about 2,000 last year, and is now already at 3,900. SmackDown and Hall of Fame are both well ahead of where it was last year. Last year, 12,000. This year, over 14,000 already, right now. And I was looking at the ticket maps before we started recording, and there's some obstructed view seating that's left, and obviously you can go to resale and get in for about $50 for all of these events, as well as Forbidden Door, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, SmackDown Hall of Fame, well above where it was last year. NXT Stand and Deliver, well above where it was last year. About 4,400 last year, about 6,800 right now. So it's going to end up higher than that. And Raw, the Raw after WrestleMania, 10,400 last year, well over 15,000 right now. And I don't know if some of this, I don't think that American Airlines necessarily sold out, because 10,000 doesn't sound like a sellout to me in basically any NBA sized arena, right? But 15,300 for what is the Crypto.com arena in LA. So everything's
Former
up.
Staples Center.
Yeah.
I mean, WWE right now is selling an absurd amount of tickets for everything, for house shows, for their TV tapings. They might have 10,000 people tonight for a house show in Denver, which is, I don't know when the last time they drew 10,000 people to a house show in Denver was, but they are. I feel like a couple of years ago, so I guess even be pre-pandemic, like WWE drawing 10,000 people to like a Raw or SmackDown felt pretty rare. And now it seems like, especially in the build up to WrestleMania, it's happening at least once a week. I know they had a huge audience in St. Louis for Raw on Monday. They had a huge audience for SmackDown a week before. They had almost 10,000 people, just a shade under 10,000 people at the MGM Grand Arena for SmackDown on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
They have almost 10,000 people for this show in Denver. That's a house show. A year ago, they had Raw in Denver, and they drew like 6,000 people. And now a house show is drawing, 3,000 more. So their ticket sales, both Raw and both SmackDown, and I haven't really investigated like who's on all these shows, who's on these house shows that are doing so well. They are through the roof in a lot of cases. And you've got to give a lot of credit to everyone involved. Triple H, in charge of creative. Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Cody Rhodes, the big stars that are appearing on these shows.
Almost
Huge.
Dominic. Yeah.
Dominic, like, whatever act you want to say is hot right now, and they have a few. And obviously, I think like the Bloodline is the biggest, and Cody is the biggest, but they are really, really drawing very well. I mean, they in St. Louis, they're crushing Dynamite. Like, Raw did, I think, like 14,000 or something in St. Louis on Monday, and Dynamite's going to be there on Wednesday, and Dynamite's probably going to do like a little over 3,000. So they're doing like 4 times Dynamite's attendance, and the gap was not that big between the two of them. There was
this past Monday's St. Louis Raw, 12,500. Independence, Missouri. This has already happened. That's 3,900. But I don't have. I'd have to look to get the St. Louis number. Independence, Missouri, and St. Louis are like right near each other, aren't they? Because I was
no. Independence is near Kansas City.
Yeah, it's Kansas City, like suburb, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But they are running the two. I mean, they're on opposite sides of Missouri. They're pretty far apart, so. I think running right after WWE is probably not helping AEW's ticket sales, especially with how expensive tickets are, and WWE's prices are higher, and AEW's prices are higher than they were.
Last count was just about 3,000 for Dynamite in.
Yeah, that's why I think Dynamite's doing actually better walk-up numbers as of late. I think, I think I mentioned this last week, but I think AEW's ticket selling patterns are becoming more like WWE, and how quickly and kind of the trends on when they sell the tickets, doing a little bit more business later in the window than previously. But yeah, I mean, let's say that show does 3,200. That's a quarter of what WWE just did. And there was a time where there was I think it was a Q1 of 2022 when Dynamite drew Raw for that quarter, just straight up, and now of 2023, and they're running in the same market in back to back weeks, and Raw is quadrupling Dynamite's attendance figure. Um,
I will
I
tell
think
you.
it just
So you
goes
said Q1 2021 is the one
2022, wasn't it? Was
2022?
there
That's what I
there
meant
was
to
a
say.
right?
Where
No,
we have an average of about 5,000 to Raw 65 to SmackDown 7,000. This is by quarter. I know there were some months, but I don't think we have any quarters for where Dynamite is doing better than either Raw or SmackDown. We have Q2 where it comes pretty close to Raw. Dynamite does
okay,
63 to 68. But if we go by month, I'm pretty sure you could take like September, right? And
right,
say
like
Dynamite did
the Grand
10,000
Slam, yeah,
to, I've got them hidden here, 10,000 to 7,000 to 9,000 Raw and SmackDown respectively. So there are months where Dynamite has averaged higher, mostly in the,
right, and
CM
now we're
Punk hot
seeing
period.
and now we're seeing a huge gap develop, and I don't like talking about the gap as much because I think it leads to a lot of doomsplaining, but um, it goes to show, I think, just in WWE's end, how much better they are just selling tickets right now uh, than they were, and how I think like
In June
you
of
know
last year, Dynamite
beating
was higher.
beating beating Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber when it seemed like Sami Zayn was the real hot guy for WWE, and you could make a case that he should have won the title, and you still can make that case. That has not slowed down WWE's business. It's not like we've seen a noticeable drop in ratings or live attendance
They
since
didn't
that
kill the
happens.
territory.
They did not kill the territory. I do think there might be some long term implications of that. Like in 6 months, is Sami Zayn still going to be as featured of an act as he is right now? I hope he is, but I don't know if he is going to. Um, but for the moment, it hasn't slowed them down at all.
And if we look at, I had this later on, we'll jump to it now. If we look at tickets distributed averages for each quarter of the last 3 quarters compared to, because now we have year over year differences. I guess this is what I was trying to focus on in this slide. We now have WrestleTix numbers that are, like to like, and we have year over year differences because WrestleTix has been following this entire period since the return to touring in July 2021. So Q1 against the same period last year, Q1, and we're almost through Q1. Q1 will end at the end of the month, and SmackDown is up 36%. This is average. Raw is up 48%. Dynamite, having gone to a lot of new markets in this quarter, is up 16%. The Rampage tapings are flat. House shows are up 16%.
So you're right. You seem to be showing television trends on this chart.
And TV ratings. So the TV ratings are this table, which I'm not talking about right now, but I'm talking about. I should have labeled this table. Yes, it's not clear that this is tickets distributed, but it is.
Okay, yeah,
Yes, yeah. So you see the house show here, and I put these letters. Yeah, I didn't label this table, but when it comes to TV ratings, people can talk about how much better WWE is and the bloodline angle all they want, but there is only one wrestling shows, wrestling companies' TV ratings that are up in the demo year over year, and that's AEW.
So AEW is the only company with a demo that's up year over year.
Wait a minute, no, it's WWE. They're up. NXT is up in the demo. Raw is up in the demo. SmackDown is up in the demo.
I don't know why'd you set it up like that?
To be an idiot.
You just totally confused me. I was like, wait, what?
No. But so WWE is the only one year over year in Q1 that's up, both in total viewership and the demo. NXT is down in total viewership, as I guess they're turning off some of their P50 plus crowd or something. I don't think there's anything significant there. But Dynamite is down 23% in the demo, 9% overall. So I think that's reflective of a genuine, substantial decline in interest in AEW. We're now getting into these. We've had Rampage year over year comparisons for 3 quarters, right? But if you want to say, well, that first period, that first quarter, that first month, certainly, that was an extraordinary Rampage situation. In any case, still we got Rampage down in January, February, March, 17%. In the demo, 39%. While Raw and SmackDown are up marginally in total viewership, but pretty strongly in the demo. Raw is up in the demo 13% in Q1. I know they had some really strong January episodes coming after the Royal Rumble and with the Legends episode or whatever, but still this is including February and March also.
Yeah, like obviously the Raw 30 was a massive episode.
Raw 30,
but that's only 1 week, and if did that do a point? Did that do a 0.70 in the demo?
That sounds right.
And so they're not hitting that, but they're right around 0.55, 0.56, up to 0.60. So, and it does feel like I think that it's not just John Cena came in for a month and is raised business. They have with Roman.
The John Cena episode of SmackDown, which was in December, did extraordinarily well.
Right.
His appearance on Raw was not anything that much bigger than usual.
He sold a lot of tickets, but
yes.
To me though, there's a lot which makes this growth. One of the reasons you see the consistent growth, I think, is that you look at the show and it's like it's a storyline. What's drawing business in is maybe it's just one storyline, maybe it's a few, but it's storylines and characters that are not nostalgia acts, that are active wrestlers, and that people enjoy seeing each week. And they're not trying to relive the past. They're trying to focus on a current active story, and we're seeing where Sami Zayn is going and where Cody is going and Roman Reigns and the Usos are going. And I personally don't like the storyline, but there's no denying that it's had a huge benefit to their business and has a sustainability factor that I think a lot of WWE business has lacked. They've been relying on not just like John Cena or The Rock or Triple H doing a match, but even someone like Brock Lesnar to anchor business around. This is using the actual active roster of people that are there every week. And I think that's, also reflected in the house shows business going up. Cody Rhodes works these house shows. Sami Zayn works these house shows. People want to pay to see those guys wrestle. And that is making a huge difference.
If you want to see something even more extreme, if we look at the difference year over year in 18 to 34, the younger half of the demo, Gull and I are not even represented in this demo anymore. And Raw is up in this is in March. Okay, Raw is up in March so far. They'll have one more episode of Raw in March. 76% with the younger half of the demo, Raw, up in March. It was up 46%. It's actually down in January. Now, we're dealing with 18 to 34, so that's going to be a smaller portion of the audience, certainly than 18 to 49. I mean, obviously. I don't think that demographic is so small in this case that it's going to produce a ton of artificial volatility that we see in trying to look at this in something like Impact, where we're talking about, I don't know, a few tens of thousands of viewers. We're talking about, I think, hundreds of thousands of viewers still when it comes to Raw and SmackDown. Let's say we're still dealing with how much? 262,000 last week, so about that. We're in the couple hundreds of thousands of viewers. And SmackDown is up 18%. And NXT is up 76%, the same as Raw. I almost wonder if I'm not referencing the right numbers here, because they're all exactly the same. That's concerning. Okay, we'll take that slide off the screen then. I'll look at that later. But anyway, it seems to be Raw and SmackDown way up, especially with younger viewers. And we do see that, we look at the median age trends, and then we see sort of Raw getting slightly younger, SmackDown getting slightly younger. So,
and again, this is partly because they've built it around, I don't want to say necessarily new stars, because these guys have been on TV for a while, but they're built around contemporary acts. They're not reliving the glory days from the Attitude Era or the Ruthless Aggression Era. I think the best thing really to happen to WWE's business, and it's crazy to say, is like The Rock and Steve Austin aren't doing something for WrestleMania. Like, would they be doing this business if the Sammy storyline and the Cody storyline was like some sort of mid-card feud, and instead Roman Reigns was feuding with The Rock, and The Rock was there like every 4 weeks to do a promo?
I guess like it depends. Like what happens to the Bloodline storyline if Brock is committed to a match? Is it they probably still do that Montreal Elimination Chamber show in the way that they did it, right?
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Rock wrestles. Maybe like the Rock and Sami Zayn are tagging. I have no idea. That would obviously draw huge business. But I think just even in the week leading up to, so if the Rock was there,
I think ratings are even
imagine
stronger than they are.
If
The
yeah,
Rock
if
is
the
making
Rock
some
was there,
appearances.
if the Rock was there and Steve Austin was there, they're both working matches at WrestleMania or whatever. I would imagine that ratings and business would be really strong, maybe even stronger than they are right now. But after WrestleMania, what are you doing? And that comes back to like the sustainability factor. Now I have confidence that this momentum, maybe it's going to peak at WrestleMania because it kind of always does. But the momentum that they have in the character and the support that they have out of the characters they have right now, I have confidence that that's going to stick around post WrestleMania, and people are going to be interested in seeing what Cody Rhodes is going to do after WrestleMania. What's Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens going to do after do they beat the Usos at WrestleMania? What happens after that? What happens to Roman Reigns if he loses the title at WrestleMania? All of that stuff, I think, can lead to the momentum and the business and the interest all being there post WrestleMania, as opposed to the Rock and Steve Austin were anchoring WrestleMania. Obviously, WrestleMania would be huge, but after that, it's kind of back to square one with WWE storytelling. That's why I use the word sustainability, because I do think that what they've built over the last 6 months or so, because they're relying on current stars and current acts and people that are going to be working house shows and people that are going to be on Raw and SmackDown every week, has this new level of sustained business success that has kind of been missing from WWE for a very long time.
And remember, if you have a question or comment, throw in a super chat, and we will touch on one more ticketing issue here. Is that Forbidden Door? We talked about this on Thursday after the pre-sale had happened, and then on Friday the general on-sale has now happened, and the show is essentially sold out. I would say. If you look at the ticket map, you can find. I did find one standard price ticket that was about $100. One ticket. Other than that, there's the platinum tickets, which start at $8.99 Canadian, and then of course there's resale. You can get in for $50 still, but this show is essentially sold out. I would say for Toronto, maybe I'll be there. We'll see. Tickets distributed. WrestleTix has it at 12,865 as of what must have been Friday night. So doing better than Revolution. Certainly in terms of number, I mean, this is doing better than probably any AEW pay-per-view since Forbidden Door last year.
You know what's weird is I was told that nobody cares about Japanese stars and that Tony Khan shouldn't book for niche interests that only indie smarks like, and yet their biggest event is a show essentially built around potential dream matches between another promotion.
Well, let's do the test then. Okay. Is Chris Gull, you're married?
Yes.
Tell me 2 facts about Genichiro Tenryu. Go.
About Tenru? Like, I mean, I'm not super familiar with Tenru, but I know obviously New Japan star, and hey, he was in the WWE Royal
New Japan
Rumble.
star? He's a New Japan star.
It was All Japan, yeah, but he was in the Royal Rumble.
He was
had
in New
matches
Japan.
in New Japan. He was never signed to New Japan.
Yes, he was in All Japan. He was he also in? Is it him that had that had his own promotion? Was that Tenru?
Yes.
What was the name of it?
It's all on the top of my head. It's I want to say it starts with an S, but I could be wrong.
Proving once and for all that if you're married, you don't know that much about Genichiro Tenryu.
Listen, I know a lot about modern Japanese wrestling. Okay, I got to go back and watch the lot of those.
Neither
I know of Tenru.
Jesse, neither of us are married, right? We could go on for days about Genichiro Tenryu.
We are not.
He's amazing feud. His amazing jacket. His amazing feud with Jumbo Tsuruta. How he started SWS with the eyeglasses guy. He started wrestling in Romance. He made
Wrestling
Ultimate Dragon the star that he is.
That's what I was thinking of. Yep, SWS.
Super World Sports, owned by eyeglass company McGain Super.
There you go. He had that awesome match with Satoshi Kojima in July 2002. I loved that match. Came back to All Japan in 2000 when Majuko Baba called him out at the Korakuen Hall. Yeah.
But
And neither of us are married, more or less.
correct. I mean, I think that's a direct line between people. No one who is married knows Junichiro Tenryu. Which is why I think, Brandon, if you ever get married, you should have a Tenryu themed wedding. I think all the groomsmen should be wearing, Revolution varsity jackets. If I ever get married, this is 100% happening. So
I will deliver brain busters to everyone at the wedding. That's the only way I'm getting married. Okay. But that's for anything else about Forbidden Door there?
well, I wanted to point out, like you mentioned, like better than any other AEW pay per view. So Forbidden Door tickets went on sale like the same time almost as Double or Nothing. And Double or Nothing right now has 6,246 tickets distributed according to
Didn't realize
WrestleTix.
that.
So about half of what Forbidden Door.
And Forbidden Door is later.
And Forbidden Door is a month after Double or Nothing. So what does that tell us anything? A theory I've heard is that Forbidden Door is a once a year special event. There is no other event that is like Forbidden Door on the wrestling calendar, certainly not on the AEW calendar. So Forbidden Door in some ways has kind of become it's kind of become like the way Wrestlemania or the Royal Rumble is, where people are going to go to that show every year and they don't care what the card is because it's a special once a year event, and they kind of have an idea what's going to happen on the show, despite the fact there's only ever been one Forbidden Door show previously. As opposed to Double or Nothing, which is indistinguishable from the other 3 AEW pay-per-views besides Forbidden Door. There's no real difference between Revolution or Full Gear or All Out. So it's kind of like Forbidden Door. It's not like AEW's flagship event, but I do think has a unique element to it that makes it feel like a big annual event in a way, as opposed to a quarterly event, which is what the other AEW pay-per-views feel like. And it's obviously a good thing.
I think there's a novelty factor to it that is not present in any other AEW event, and I think it's kind of like thinking back to like the 2000s when All Japan and New Japan started working together. There was a genuine novelty in seeing that interpromotional interaction, what that would be like. That is, exceeds any single promotion's own show.
Right, and if we accept that there are a couple of thousand real hardcore New Japan Pro Wrestling fans in the United States will fly to a major show featuring New Japan Pro Wrestling talent, that adds, an extra crowd of a couple thousand people that are going to go to that event as opposed to a regular AEW pay-per-view. But I do think when we talk about like establishing those big annual events, like the strength of WrestleMania for WWE, and to a slightly lesser extent the Royal Rumble, but having those annual events where you've been doing them for so long that there's a whole cycle of people maybe who don't watch WWE from May through December, but tune in right around Royal Rumble time and watch up through WrestleMania and then to go on hiatus again. And we pretty much see, business for WWE peaking during those months every single year. And I think that's something that every wrestling company would want to have. They'd want to have these big signature events that they can build around every year and that have the name of the event as a level of brand significance to the fan base. But how do you establish that? I don't think AEW has really done that with any of their pay-per-views, again, because they all kind of feel the same, except for Forbidden Door. We saw Impact try to make, everyone wants to have their own WrestleMania, right? Impact has tried this. They've tried it with Bound for Glory. They've kind of shifted it a little bit more towards Slammiversary in recent years, but Impact always was trying to find what's going to be our WrestleMania. ROH tried to find, theirs. They always try to kind of promote Final Battle as their WrestleMania. And those never really took off. They never really felt that different than their other major pay-per-views.
You can't just
That,
say this is the biggest show of the year. It has to actually feel to the fan base like it is the biggest
right.
show of the year.
And,
I think there was
how do
a
you
period even in WWE's history where WrestleMania was not that. If you think to, say, WrestleMania 1997 and WrestleMania 2003, I think neither of those WrestleManias were the most bought shows in their year among the other pay-per-views.
I believe WrestleMania 13 is kind of famous for being the only WrestleMania that was not. I guess it would have been. I guess there are probably other years where other events would have been higher attended shows, just based on arena configuration. But there was a big like WrestleMania 13. I think like the Royal Rumble before WrestleMania 13 sold multiple
Certainly,
times
that's the
in
Alamo
tickets.
Dome.
Yeah.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about pay-per-view buys, though.
Did Survivor Series have more pay-per-view buys that year?
I will look.
The
Because I feel like when you talk 1997, Survivor Series just overshadows WrestleMania.
In history, certainly, but not probably not at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Survivor Series. We're talking about Montreal Screwjob Survivor
Yes.
Series. We got to talk about buy rates now, rather than buys. But 0.89 buy rate for Survivor Series 97 Montreal Screwjob. WrestleMania 13 0.77. So Survivor Series did outdraw. I mean, we're getting towards the end of 97. Maybe there's a greater popularity effect that's benefiting.
We're talking about Steve.
So WrestleMania 13 does outdraw
in the product
Royal
run.
Rumble. Royal Rumble, San Antonio, Shawn Michaels, Sid, 0.70 versus WrestleMania 13, 0.77 buy rate. But again, Survivor Series Montreal, 0.89. SummerSlam, 0.80. So does better than WrestleMania. That's the Bret Hart Undertaker SummerSlam.
Yeah, and as we go back further, there's like greater fluctuation in business, like WWE's business trends in the mid 90s to late 90s. Like you can talk early 97, WWE's business is in one place. Late 1997, business is kind of in another place. Early 1998, the business is in one place. Late 1998, the business is in another place. As they kept going up. But I think the question I have is kind of how do you establish a signature event as being your signature show? And like we saw with the Impact and what we've seen with Ring of Honor, you can't just say it.
I think part of it for
I
WrestleMania
think, like,
is the venue, is you're doing it in a stadium.
right? But even before WrestleMania was always in stadiums, it had a certain air to it. I think WrestleMania is the oldest continued pay-per-view that WWE has. It's the original show.
The longest
always-
episodic pay-per-view. Longest
Right,
running
it's-
episodic
it's-
pay-per-view in history.
It was like an original brainchild of Vince McMahon. It's got
They
an
did
iconic
not steal
name.
from Dusty Rhodes, yes.
Right. It's got an iconic name. It was anchored at the very beginning with, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T and Roddy Piper
And really,
Cindy
from the beginning,
Lauper.
it was closed circuit. You know, it and then WrestleMania. I think WrestleMania 2 is in. It definitely is. WrestleMania 2 is in 2 locations, and then WrestleMania 3
It's in
is the
th-
biggest event
WrestleMania is-
ever.
WrestleMania 2's in 3 locations.
3 locations.
Yeah, New York, Chicago, and
I'm
Los
confusing it
Angeles.
with Starrcade 85 or something.
Yeah. So they have. So WrestleMania has this thing. The Royal Rumble is obviously an old event, but Royal Rumble has this wonderful gimmick match that everyone likes to see every year, and that has established kind of the Royal Rumble is kind of a special event that people will tune into kind of no matter what. Other than that, I mean, Money in the Bank, I think for a moment kind of had a similar kind of thing where the match was very interesting. So people were kind of more interested in Money in the Bank, and it kind of pushed its way into being maybe the 4th most significant show of the year ahead of Survivor Series. I think the Money in the Bank gimmick has kind of cooled off in recent years, which has hurt it. Doesn't seem to have the lasting power that the Royal Rumble has as far as having a gimmick match. But that's kind of how WWE's established it. And I wonder, and I think Tony Khan's strategy with AEW was to kind of have all 4, we're only going to have 4 pay-per-views a year. They're all going to be very important. They're all going to have, big blow-off matches because we're not going to be doing all these B-level pay-per-views every month like WWE does. And I think that's worked in the extent that all of the shows all the AEW pay-per-views, because there are only 4 of them, feel big, feel important, feel significant. But they don't have that one big signature event that can kind of anchor business. And I wonder if that maybe they'd be better off trying to do that and even if you can do that, because it's very difficult to do, WWE has decades of history that kind of allow for them to do that.
I have a question. Do you think that AEW gives away too many murky matches on TV that could be used to build up their special event? Like the use of Shaq when you use Shaq, or like what we just saw with El Hijo
In a previous
versus Omega.
era, perhaps, but not in this era where TV rights are so important.
I mean, I get
Yeah,
that, but
it is a balance. And I think you're right, Gullo, in the sense that something like the Shaq match could have made a pay-per-view feel different. I think part of it is when you do quarterly pay-per-views, to move the stories along, you're going to have to do big matches on TV. And the reality is that AEW could be a very successful company if they never did pay-per-views at all and they just did television, because that's where the money is now. But yeah, is there certain things that they could do to kind of spice up? I mean, WWE at times, I think, has been victimized by the idea of we have to hold off on doing something because it has to happen at WrestleMania, and a story gets colder because of that. We've seen that happen kind of plenty of times. So it's not always like a perfect thing, but I do think that, and I don't know how you do it once the kind of brand identity has been established with all of these shows, but I don't know. Like, could you just pick, All Out is now our WrestleMania? Okay, how do you do that?
I think it has to, for one thing that might help. One thing that would help is doing it in a stadium, but I don't know. Now is not the optimal time to try to run a stadium show for AEW. Maybe that time was in the summer or the fall of 2021, but it's not right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. But even then, that might only be one show. Like, say you get a hot angle. Let's say CM Punk comes back and he's wrestling the Elite, or he's wrestling Kenny Omega, which we're less confident in happening now than we were when we talked about it a week ago. But let's just say that, because that's like a huge angle, right? And let's say they run that at Soldier Field at All Out this.
Is that the biggest, to get sidetracked for a second, is the biggest money match that the AEW potentially has on the table if everybody cooperated in an ideal universe? CM Punk versus Kenny Omega? Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you what do you think?
I have to think about it, but I think so. Off the top of my head, yes.
Yeah. Maybe something with CM. I don't know if a tag match would be bigger, but maybe something with CM Punk and the Young Bucks. Like
yeah,
CM
maybe
Punk
a 6-man versus Punk and FTR versus the Bucks and Omega. Yeah,
Certainly.
Yeah,
Money there.
but typically singles matches tend to be bigger than tag matches or things like that. But let's just, like, I'm just hypothetically saying they have this hot angle and they run All Out at Soldier Field. Does that really elevate All Out to this new status of a show or is that just because they had a hot angle for that particular pay-per-view quarter, and they were able to run a stadium? I think that
part of what makes WrestleMania a peak event brand is the history behind it. And I guess the closest equivalent for AEW is All In / All Out, but All Out has kind of become one of the 4 quarterly pay-per-views, not that distinct from any of the others. I guess that's the one to try to start to build up, but yeah, it doesn't have a difference. I guess how would you make it? Okay, you do it once, it's a stadium, it's a big show, whatever, and then how do you continue that? I don't know, continue to run it at a stadium, continue to build your biggest matches towards
right.
that,
You run it
event.
as
and it would take years, perhaps, of sacrifice to
Yeah.
make sure that it becomes that big, and maybe years of continuing to run it at a loss.
Is that worth it? I have no idea. I think
Probably, if the business continues to succeed, yeah.
right. Well, but if you're now suddenly you're holding off on of finishing feuds at other shows because everything has to be geared towards All Out.
Or you're at least, coordinating everything to culminate
Yeah.
then.
I think WWE has a WWE established WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble kind of during a different era of business. Now, the Royal Rumble has a match gimmick, which is kind of different. But like WrestleMania, when WrestleMania was first established, like, it was kind of during an era where, like, you kind of Hulk Hogan kind of only needed to do like 2 feuds a year. So it was easy to finish it off at WrestleMania because they didn't have weekly television and they didn't have all these other things to fill. So it kind of naturally establishes WrestleMania as this big, huge event. Um, I don't know if WWE could establish WrestleMania in 2020. In 2023, if they were starting at Ground Zero. We know that they wanted to turn day one into a huge annual event. That was like a goal of Nick Khan's, was day one is going to be like another major annual pay-per-view for us. It's going to be in Atlanta every year. And they did one show and then they didn't do it this year. So I think it's a challenge in this environment to establish one big mega show. I will say, not in America, but obviously Wrestle Kingdom has achieved this for New Japan, and that's been developed mainly in the 21st century as a sense of an annual.
It's a tradition
major.
that goes back to '92 as well, but not under different names, you could say. But it's
right,
been
January 4th show
every year, Tokyo Dome since 1992.
But anyway, like Wrestle Kingdom was like dying,
yes, when the
12
business was dying.
Yeah, 12 or 13 years ago. Yeah. But it's definitely picked back up in importance in recent years. But again, that's a different model. I mean, New Japan can afford to hold off on some major matches like that because, especially the last few months of New Japan Pro Wrestling's calendar is not full of necessarily major shows that you need to have big title matches on. You basically have one or two. You have like King of Pro Wrestling, and then you have the November show. And that's pretty much it. Then you can just go to the Tokyo Dome, as opposed to AEW. You'd have TV every week. You'd have to fill, months of television to kind of lead up to a big show. It's just, I think it's really difficult for them to establish that.
Don't forget, this is Patreon, patreon.com/Wrestlenomics. You can get my nearly daily TV ratings reports on WAW. And we'll have eventually catch-ups on Impact, New Japan, WoW, MLW, quarter hours as well. Thursday, we've been continuing to do the Thursday 30, not the Thursday 30, the Wrestlenomics 30, because sometimes we'll have to do it on days other than Thursday. It's the podcast for subscribers only. You get access to the viewership spreadsheet and the slides to this podcast, as well as, speaking of live events, we have reports. We had a report this week on the just how much money AEW's House Rules house show made. It made just a hair under $100,000 in ticket sales. There's also a breakdown of any merchandise sales, which was fascinating to look at. Also on the website for free, I've been posting updates on the Luchasaurus lawsuit over the intellectual property of the mask there, and working on more right now too. So I've got some merchandise numbers that are similar to the data that we looked at last week. Is Cody increasing in his merchandise sales? This data that I've been collecting data every day from WWE Shop, from PWTees, from ShopAEW, and I've taken all of the top 10 for each day and ranked, okay, whose items are most often in the top 10. And over the entire course of this time, which goes back to October or September, Roman Reigns is number one. But what's been happening in recent weeks? Is Cody climbing here? He is. We've got what Steve Austin was doing really well around the 316 period, where they had a lot of merchandise for him. John Cena popping back up. But Cody is number two this week behind. This is the entire week, right? Because we're starting on the 19th, which was what day of the week? Yeah, so this is this week. Cody is number two, behind only WrestleMania branded things. So as we march towards WrestleMania, Cody Rhodes, this data would suggest that yes, Cody Rhodes is becoming a very strong merchandise seller relative to his peers.
In this, the timeline really works well with his return at the Royal Rumble, and new merch being rolled out, I'm sure, associated with the Royal Rumble. And I know he has a new shirt that I think just came out. And so, yeah, I mean, he's a really buyer for WWE, and his year since coming to WWE from AEW, really, I mean, his injury is bad, obviously, but really couldn't have gone any better for him. Seems like. We'll see what happens at WrestleMania, but.
And when it comes to looking at numbers like this, as we all know, WWE, like all aspects of life, is a meritocracy. It's based on how hard you work. Everyone has the same opportunity. As Nick Khan said, once people are treated humanely at W as they should be. And so if we look at the number of items that people have had, various talent have had available over this about mid-September timeline, where we're missing a few days back here in the fall. But other than that, I think since the new year, at least, I did collect data every day. And so here's the top 5 talents with the most items on WWEshop.com. And Roman Reigns has been number 1 and was number 2 before that, just behind Steve Austin. But he's even more numbers. There's over 100 Roman Reigns items that you can browse through and collect them all.
Is this counting Bloodline merchandise as Roman Reigns merchandise?
I think it is, but I looked this morning and I did not find in a quick scan. I'm sure if I went back further, I would find Bloodline things that I assigned to Roman Reigns. I'm doing this in an automated way, but all the items that I see right now that are at least highly selling, in the top 10 or so, are things that have Roman Reigns in the item description. Mm-hmm. But yes, this would include at least some Bloodline.
Do we know what happened to Bray Wyatt's merchandise after the Royal Rumble?
Bray Wyatt's not in here.
Right. So
I'll look in a minute.
He drops completely out of the top 10.
Oh, you're talking about like in terms of how many times he appears? He's number 2, right, and he drops out of the top 10 in February. Right.
So he just hits a wall. He's basically a really strong merch draw since his return, I think, right?
Probably.
He's probably in there every week almost. And then he just stops. He's still number 2. It's according to this grand total chart, despite not placing for the last month.
Let's look at I'm going to bust out the spreadsheet itself.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that?
So
present.
What's going on there? Is there still Bray Wyatt merchandise for sale?
Let's browse. So if we scroll back here, now we're looking at the actual Excel spreadsheet. So Bray Wyatt starts to appear, and I am missing some crucial days around his return, which are crucial, mm-hmm, where I imagine he was probably number 1 in this week and so forth. But anyway, he's number 1 after that for a while. But we just don't have any items in the last few weeks where one of his items is in the top 10.
He's basically top 3 pretty much every week from his return until really his Royal Rumble match, and then he hasn't been on TV really that much, and there's some uncertainty. It seems like there's some sort of medical reason why he hasn't been on television. His WrestleMania match seems up in the air with Bobby Lashley. But his merchandise plummeting, I don't know if that's just solely because he hasn't been on TV, and so he's not selling merchandise, but it's kind of strange to me that he has been
he does have some items that are here that are appearing, well below the top 10. I'm just checking to verify that they haven't like taken all of his merch down. I would like to see how many items, if the number of items that he has decreased over time. That would probably take too much time to do live in the air here, though.
And his as been said many times, his real value to WWE is that he's an excellent merchandise draw. So is this just a symptom of him cooling off? I think everyone thinks that he's cooled off. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. So is this just a symptom of him cooling off? Is there more to it than that? Has he had merchandise pulled? Are they trying to phase him down for whatever reason? I don't know, but I do think
Vince back, and Vince has got an axe to grind.
I think it's interesting that he was a top merchandise draw and then he falls off a cliff. And he hasn't been.
When's the last time he's been on television? Was he on television during this period? So this is the
it depends. It depends on what
February
you describe
12th.
as. It depends on what you describe as on television, because he has vignettes. Like he appeared on SmackDown. I don't know if he appeared on SmackDown this past week, but the week before that, like they flashed something during like a Bobby Lashley segment or something, where Bray Wyatt's face appeared for a second. So like, does that count as Bray Wyatt being on the show? They kind of have stopped talking about his WrestleMania match that has not been promoted over the last like 2 or 3 weeks. Again, because it seems like it might be up in the air, due to what has been mentioned and reported by both Dave Meltzer and Sean Ross Sapp as some sort of physical or medical issue.
Yeah, the last time we have I'm looking at the quarter hours on a different sheet that's off screen. The last time we have a quarter-hour label that contains the string Bray is February 17th, which lines up pretty well with what we're looking at here in terms of where he falls off.
And of course, there are other people on this list who have not been on television that are still placing highly. So it's not necessarily a direct correlation between you're on television, you can't sell merchandise, because we have seen plenty of people, including things like the NWO, who have not been on television but have managed to crack into the top 10. So it is possible.
We have Steve Austin.
It's very noticeable. It's very noticeable on the spreadsheet that the guy who's number 2 in grand total hasn't placed in the top 10 in a month.
Okay. We'll go back to the slides. How do I make that happen? I have to stop this and restart this. Okay. Chrome. Okay. So if we look at, and by the way, I guess we could make a similar argument about, well, Cody's up and Cody's items are way up. There's now somewhere around 50, 60 Cody items as he's emerged as one of these stronger sellers here versus where he was previously, where he was, around 40 and before that as low as 20 while before he made his return.
He wasn't on TV. And were they making new Cody merchandise when he was injured? Probably not. Maybe there was something here or there, but obviously he comes out and there's all this new merchandise leading up to WrestleMania. So it's obvious why you see a big jump.
But this is the top 10. What talent? I've excluded all like the WWE branded stuff here. But what talent has the most items? And it's an overwhelming number of people who are no longer active wrestling talents, including, as we mentioned, Steve Austin, The Rock, D-Generation X, The Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, Eddie Guerrero. The only two, I think there's 3 active talents here, right? And that's Reigns, Lesnar, and Cody, who are among the 10 most items. The people with the 10 most items. When it comes to AEW Shop, or I should say ShopAEW, this data gives me every reason to believe that the Acclaimed have emerged as really strong merchandise draws. Not in this week are they number 1, but they've been number 1 in a lot of weeks. And they are often number 1 or number 2 if they're not number 1. They're number 4 in this week. The Elite have jumped up to number 2. Kenny Omega is number 1 in this week. I think he's come out with a new shirt or something. Does
Kenny Omega get credit for the Elite too?
I don't know. This is like, does your name appear in the item name?
Right, but practically speaking, he does, right? Like the elite merchandise sales can be attributed to Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks.
I would think he's getting royalties. He and the Young Bucks are probably the 3 people getting royalties for those items.
You don't think Brandon Cutler's getting a cut of that?
Maybe he has a case. And who else performs well here? This is over the course of the entire timeline that goes back to the fall, and it's the Acclaimed, the Elite, AEW branded things, MJF, Danhausen, FTR. No Orange Cassidy, remarkably here, where I think he's done well in prior periods. But Danhausen really does show up as among the leaders here in terms of people whose items appear in the top 10 for Shop AEW. Briscoes did really strongly, just after Jay Briscoe died.
And what stands out to me is, how strongly just AEW branded stuff seems to sell. And for all the talk about WWE being a company that like the brand is the draw, not individual
stars. In WWE,
stars.
that was the case too. I just excluded it from the tables that we were just looking at.
So WWE just and I don't see, like, does WWE make a lot of like WWE merchandise like that just say WWE on it?
You would be surprised.
The way AEW does, like AEW has all sorts of shirts and jackets and hats and all these things that are just like all elite wrestling. It doesn't seem like WWE produces a lot of that.
So this is just what I collected this morning. Men's Royal W SmackDown Draft T-shirt, W Championship Contenders boxer briefs, W Distress logo pullover, W Tribute polo, W logo cuffed knit hat, W Champion Dad shirt, WWEX Meek Mill Dreams versus Nightmares limited edition T-shirt. What the hell is that? W Distress logo T-shirt. Antigua black/red W generation quarters that pull over. I could go on. There's like dozens more.
Yeah. Okay. So people don't want to wear. So people are not.
And you're asking,
fact
do they
that-
rank highly? That's a different
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
And I did exclude it from that table for the W table that we were looking at because I'm trying to do like talent analytics here. I would have to take some time and to tell you, do those things sell well, or maybe we could just look right now at the
How many?
Shop site and
How many?
see if
How
any of
much?
those are ranking highly.
How much WWE merch do you own, Brandon?
Of any kind?
Do you own any WWE or AEW merchandise?
I'm an unbiased journalist, so therefore I do not wear merchandise.
Gullo?
I don't think I have any anymore. I had like a Rusev shirt and a Sasha Banks shirt, but I've not worn. I mean, I don't think I own them anymore.
Yeah. I have some like legend shirts that I got out of PWT, but nothing really WWE or AEW. I mean, I got some figures, WWE figures.
I am blocked at the moment from the WWE Shop website, so we're having some trouble here trying to do what we're doing.
They're listening.
Well, because I've been hitting their website in an automated way, so they're trying to block me. I can't get in there.
I haven't bought. I don't think I've ever bought any AEW merchandise, and I bought a WWE shirt. I had a Zack Ryder shirt in like 2010, which I believe is the only WWE shirt I've ever purchased. I have the Ten Ryu shirt, which I'm pretty sure I bought off Redbubble, and I have a
Did
Kota
Tether get any
Ibushi.
royalties for that, or is that like?
For no, definitely not. I bought a Kota Ibushi shirt from a while ago, but I still have it. And I have a Bullet Club zip up hoodie, which I don't wear anymore due to too many comments from gun rights activists seeing it. But that's, I mean, people have talked about this a lot, like wrestling merchandise and like what makes good wrestling merchandise. And for me, it's I would buy more wrestling merchandise if the designs were more subtle in that they could give off a people walking down the street wouldn't know it's a wrestling shirt unless they're a wrestling fan. But I feel like most of these are very garish, and they therefore unappealing to me as someone who would actually wear a shirt like that in public.
I'm trying on my phone to find bestsellers while using my cell data. It didn't work. Anyway, I can't tell you that I've been blocked. I can tell you that I've been blocked by. This has happened before, though. I will get past it, I'm sure. Anyway, if we look at Pro Wrestling Tees, it's a similar story. The Acclaimed is number one over the entire time, of course, going back to the fall. Briscoes are number two. MJF is number three. AEW brand. Danhausen, the Elite FTR. Mercedes Moné, Kenny Omega, Sting are the 10.
Yeah,
the
and Mercedes
top 10.
really peaking with like her matches, right? Her Wrestle Kingdom debut.
And she's only been on here for a few months because she's not been on Pro Wrestling Tees before then. Yeah. And I think that's all I have for today. Is that true? I do. I have this like Bing AI chat thing I did about. I know it's a SWOT analysis, but I don't know what I want to do it. I have conflicting feelings about. I'm not sure it'll be interesting. If you have anything, Jesse.
I mean, I really don't. I think like the big thing I've noticed is the attendance for WWE going up. Kind of what does that say about anything? It's gonna make me think a lot about the Hall of Fame later, Brandon.
In what
Make me think
regard?
about how. Well, I think that this year, Roman Reigns has proven that he's really WWE's business has really moved forward this year with Roman Reigns. You could argue that Sami Zayn and Cody Rhodes are more important to raising business, but like really Roman Reigns being at the center of WWE business is something that we haven't seen before him with this kind of growth. And I think that's a big win for him, for WWE booking, and kind of, is it Sami Zayn? Yeah, is it Cody? But they probably all. The reason Sami Zayn and Cody feel as important as they do is because they're confronting this villain who's been at the center of WWE for so long.
Now, when you say Hall of Fame, you're talking about the most prestigious Hall of Fame in all of wrestling, which is the WWE Hall of Fame, the ceremony this Friday, correct?
Correct. The not the Hall of Fame that I have a vote for. The Hall of
You
Fame
vote.
that
You
Vince
vote in the W Hall of Fame.
No, I
Galaxy?
said that's no. I have a worthless vote in the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. I'm talking about the Hall of Fame that Vince McMahon decides on all inductees by the time he
Do you think Vince is still
wakes up.
solely deciding? Is does Triple H
So
take over that
so
reign?
so for the record, I was being sarcastic. I was talking about the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, but in terms of the WWE Hall of Fame, Dave said that he thinks that like Andy Kaufman's induction is a sign that Triple H is making the decisions on the Hall of Fame now, because Andy Kaufman's someone that Jerry Lawler always petitioned to wanting to get into the Hall of Fame. But Vince has always been resistant to it because it has nothing to do with WWE at all. And it's pre,
It's a
history.
celebrity association that doesn't associate itself with W itself.
Right. And it's kind of a prehistory.
It's that Memphis wrestling.
Right. So is this a sign that Triple H is making the decisions for the Hall of Fame? Maybe. Is it a sign that maybe Jerry Lawler's recent health scare has maybe softened up the opinion on it? But and also like the Hall of Fame just doesn't have many good candidates. So
who's accepting the Hall of Fame for Andy Kaufman?
I don't know.
Is Andy Kaufman making his return to public life?
That would be
Tony Clifton's gonna accept it.
Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman. Hologram Andy Kaufman. I mean, I assume he probably has some family. That's I don't know if he had any children, but he could have had brothers and nieces or nephews or something like that.
Okay. Is Roman Reigns a Wrestling Observer Hall of Famer?
I think his case is a lot stronger now than it was when we voted last year. Just based on we're now seeing
2 episodes ago, I believe. Is Roman Reigns a draw? We discussed it. Chris Gullo, I have to apologize for him. He thinks Orange Cassidy and that are bigger draws than Roman Reigns.
Apparently that's what people heard on the recording. So
that's some of the feedback.
Look. You can analyze this closely and say, well, Cody is drawing these people. Sami Zayn is drawing these people. Roman's on the show and he's not doing anything, or when Roman's there and Roman's not there, it's not a big difference. But I think in the macro sense, Roman is the central villain in WWE. Deserves recognition for helping Cody and Sami reach a new level. If Sami and Cody were feuding with Baron Corbin or Judgment Day or like a lesser heel group, then I don't think they would be nearly as popular. So he deserves credit for that. I'm not saying I'm going to vote for Roman Reigns. There's much larger discussion that comes with all this, including like the attrition based stuff. But I think for the first time in his career, we're really seeing massive positive business trends. And he deserves credit.
While he is the biggest star.
He's the biggest star in the company. He's the biggest star in wrestling.
You can look at SmackDown's ratings in particular, which have performed better. Performed better than Raw ratings. And why is that? I think the biggest factor is the creative around Roman Reigns on that show.
And they're on network television.
When I say better, I'm not just talking about the fact that the viewership is higher, but the ratings year over year have improved to a greater degree for SmackDown than for Raw.
Correct, and that is the Bloodline. That's Sami Zayn. That's Cody Rhodes. Or it's not as much Cody because he's only appeared on SmackDown intermittently. But I think that I am a chief Roman Reigns disrespecter, so I don't say these things lightly.
This is a big peace offering that's happening right here.
I'm being logical, and I'm looking at the data, and I'm saying this is what's happening.
Yeah. You're being an objective star rater. Yeah.
I will be the first to say. I already said today, I don't really like the Bloodline angle. I think it's boring. I think it's gone on way too long. I think it's redundant. I think everything week to week is almost the exact same. And this central storyline is just Roman doesn't trust the people around him, and it's been going on for 3 years, and I'm ready for it to end. But that's just my personal opinion. But looking at it from a business perspective, it's obviously a huge success. It's obviously getting a lot of fans interested in the product. It seems to have had a positive impact on like 18 to 34 numbers, which is something that WWE was missing for a long time. Obvious that right now that angle is doing very well for WWE, and that helps Roman Reigns' Hall of Fame case, and it helps, make the decision to elevate Roman Reigns to this level above everyone else on the roster, which probably cost popularity at certain points in WWE's history. It makes that decision a little bit easier to tolerate now that we're seeing some of those benefits.
Yeah, I think at this point, there's no doubt in my mind that Roman Reigns is WWE's most valuable individual talent, based on what I see in TV ratings and based on other things that are not as real numbers, but are suggestive and supportive to that notion, including these merchandise numbers that we were just looking at, including YouTube and Google Trends as well. And I think the point against him is, well, how much did that opportunity cost of pushing him for so many years as hard as they did? That was a big cost. What we can't say is that despite that huge push, he's still not producing, because now he is.
Right.
Correct. And I assume he was producing fairly well for him before now as well. But he certainly, again, and there's no doubt in my mind that he is WWE's most valuable individual talent.
Correct. Certainly full time.
Yes.
And availability is a big part of that, right? Like he's been. We'll see, I'm really interested to see if he loses at WrestleMania, and I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he's going to lose.
I think he will.
I think I would say Cody is the favorite. I think it's a good thing that I think it's a good thing that some people believe that Roman Reigns is going to win, because that helps make the match more exciting as opposed to
it's uncertain for sure.
Yeah,
I think
but
Cody's charm tour has earned it.
If he loses, will he take a lot of time off? What happens then to WWE business if he's not around? If he doesn't work any of the pay-per-views until like SummerSlam, and then who is going to be the face of WWE if Roman morphs more into like this late career John Cena stage of his career, where he's maybe wrestling 4 or 5 matches a year, but someone else is going to have to be like the default face of the company. And who will that person be? Will it be Cody? Will it be Sami Zayn? Probably not going to be Sami Zayn. If anything, it's age related. But will it be Braun Breaker? Will it be someone else?
Cody for a bit, assuming he stays healthy.
I think Cody is a good choice, but Cody almost to me, Cody is almost. I think Cody will be a heel a year from now. He's a different type. Cody to me isn't a top. I think Cody is a top wrestler and a top name and a top guy, but I don't necessarily see Cody as like the top babyface the way like a John Cena was. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Cody is a much more nuanced character in a lot of ways, and that kind of the appeal is that he can be a babyface or a heel. Yeah. And I think that will be used at some point to help another wrestler get to a new level.
I mean, they seem to be about to get really strongly behind Cody Rhodes at an age where he's the same age as me, so like 37. So he's not nearly as young as John Cena was when they got behind John Cena. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be this drive the shit for all these years, but at least for a time and until.
I mean, post WrestleMania for sure, Cody, especially if he wins, is going to be the top babyface. But like the whole Roman Reigns push 10 years ago was because WWE was thinking long term and was thinking about who's going to be our replacement for John Cena, who's going to be that person that we're going to have headline WrestleMania as the babyface every year.
And to be clear, it's not as if Roman Reigns is going away. Maybe he'll
but you need,
but he'll have matches this year,
right. But we saw that it's not like John Cena went away when Roman Reigns replaced him, but Roman Reigns replaced him as the top babyface from like a week to week function standpoint. And who is that person going to be? I'm not bullish on a lot of their prospects. So will that be maybe someone from AEW that comes over that's maybe younger? Is that the elevation of someone we haven't even seen before? those are major questions that I think we'll have to get answers to maybe over the next year.
Yes. We'll see whose contract expires. Okay. That's it. That's all I got. Plugs?
We
Yes?
well, we
Oh,
got
we have
super chat.
chats? Oh, we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have a super chat. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So this is from Contrasoma. Any thoughts?
Oh, that's
RE
Bruce
Fight
Lord.
Plus as a loss leader / OTT service. Is there a long-term risk in changing perceived cost of GCW Mania weekend like the network did for Mania? Maybe even for non-fight GCW-associated pay-per-views.
I think the little that we've seen from Triller, I would have to look. I think we even got a breakout of a fight itself. Anyway, I don't believe that fight is profitable, and I don't think that they expect it to be that profitable. I think this is all an investment towards the future, like a lot of like almost every streaming service is, except for Netflix. Yeah, and I think it's a good question whether they must think it's the better strategy because it's what they're doing as far as making these events that used to be pay-per-views not pay-per-views. Some of them are still pay-per-views. The bigger events like the Impact and the New Japan are pay-per-view events that you have to make a single purchase to watch. But a lot of these events, including the GCW events, which you mentioned, are part of that subscription service, with the hope that people stay. I think you can sign up for a trial, and I might sign up for a trial to see some of these events for Wrestlemania weekend. You have thoughts on this, Gullo? Are you in the clusterfuck this year?
I am not.
Is there a clusterfuck this year?
There hasn't been one announced. I believe there is
It's late in the show,
break.
so we can say clusterfuck without getting demonetized.
Yes. One thing I do notice is that there is less events this year. Did that maybe have something to do with it? Like, usually I think they run an average 12 events in the 3-day collective, and I think there's 8 or 9, if I'm not mistaken. But I think, I mean, yeah, the free trial thing throws a wrench, but I think it's a good business idea because it is getting people to subscribe to it. Then they can go to the previous content. I mean, it's something Fight's been doing for a while. They did it with WrestleCon. They did it with, when they do the not Starcades, Starcast events. And I mean, we don't know the numbers on those, but I mean, we seem to be doing all right. And I don't think Fight is carrying anything non-collective related that weekend, but I could be wrong. Oh no, they are. Yeah, they're doing they Impact in New Japan. Yeah, which is running the same time as the DDT versus GCW event. Yeah, and then they got some of the podcasts.
What do we know? I don't know if we know this, but what do you believe is out of everything they have on Fight, not just wrestling, what do we believe is like their biggest drawing act?
Probably
programming.
Probably the boxing events with celebrities, or those. I even think the Pauls fight are on Fight. Like Logan Paul's had fights on Fight. Jake too, I think.
Did you rule out AEW there?
Oh, well, yeah, because it's internationally, right? Yeah.
I'm sure.
But I would imagine that a Jake Paul fight does bigger numbers than AEW.
It certainly did at its peak.
Yes.
And I tend to believe there's tens of thousands of subscribers, maybe like 100,000 even for AEW Fight Plus. And remember, this is internationally, so it's not really domestic unless people are using a VPN. But I think that's an extreme minority.
And Supercard Honor, is that just Honor Club membership?
That is on Friday, and I do not see. Oh, it is on Fight. It is on Fight.
Okay.
0 Hour is, but I only see 0 Hour. I'm sure we can figure this out very quickly.
I mean, we haven't talked really at all about WrestleMania weekend. I guess we don't really know what the ticket sales are going to be for a lot of these smaller indie shows, but it definitely feels like WrestleMania weekend probably peaked a few years ago, and ever since the pandemic kind of canceled it, I think hasn't quite gotten back up to speed.
Yeah. It seems like Dallas was oversaturated last year. There was maybe too many events. There's definitely less events this year. There's still a lot of shows, but not a lot of the Black Label Pros not there. AEW is not there. A lot of your standard super indies, if you give them a term,
your larger indies.
I think Prestige is the only non-GCW super indie that's there. Other than that, it's a lot of California-based independents.
Yeah, that's interesting. And is there less? Does I mean less talent is coming in? I mean, you have like New
It's not
Japan
less
talent.
talent. It's not
Yeah.
less talent. I'll tell you that because there's a lot of prestige, like with the amount of Japanese talent and
Yeah.
lucha libre talent that it's easier to get to Los Angeles than on the
Yeah.
East Coast. There's a lot of talent now.
And you'll have, Ring of Honor is there, New Japan and Impact are running their joint show. So you have like you have larger shows in addition to like things like the Joey Janela's Spring Break and the larger GCW shows.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
will
you're
be
going to have
there.
many members of DDT there, many members of New Japan. So, like, I think the talent's there. Oh, and TJPW is doing a show too, I believe, as well.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
It looks like you can get the Ring of Honor pay-per-view on Fight. I take it worldwide based on what I'm reading on the Ring of Honor website, which does not mention Bleacher Report. I don't think. Yeah,
So if you're
Bleacher Report.
if you're Fight, you're almost counteracting yourself. Yeah, you're basically getting all the GCW events for a $10 membership, but you're gonna gonna make buys on that New Japan Impact and the Ring of Honor show. So
yeah, WrestleMania weekend has peaked in the sense of what, in terms of buzz, in terms of match quality, or in terms of actual revenue generation?
It's not match quality. It's probably buzz and revenue.
You think the match quality is still as good as it was years ago?
I mean, have you seen that list of Mike Bailey matches? I want to see all of them.
No, I
don't
know
know.
the match quality to me is going to be significantly less. I was not impressed with what I saw last year compared. I mean, and this is just the reality of indie wrestling and the reality of like contracts. Like if we go back in time, and like AEW didn't exist, so you had a lot more of the AEW talent on these weekend shows, and lesser New Japan talent. I'm like,
this is something I kind of try to bring up to Mike Weber. Like, do you feel that indie wrestling is still as strong as it was before? And I mean, naturally, the guy selling this says no. I think it's never been stronger.
I think that and part of it to me is just the what has become popular in indie wrestling, and the vibe with that. It seems like a lot of these shows have, not all of them. I want to stress that is not like I'm going to go out of my way to see. I'm not a huge deathmatch guy, and that seems has become a bigger and bigger anchor for these kind of weekends. And I'm not a big comedy gimmick heavy guy, and that's all another kind of thing that's kind of because those are the things that are resistant to WWE and AEW and New Japan becoming more aggressive with talent, because they're not going to sign a lot of the key deathmatch guys, and they're not going to sign a lot of the more gimmick-based wrestlers. So that's the talent that's kind of left, and that's the talent that kind of has gotten over to a degree, and you see a lot of them on these shows. I've been watching 16 Carat this last week, and I watched the first two nights, and and I know this is Europe, but I was first nights, and I was like, man, like WXW, like they've got some interesting younger talent, and I was like, this is a far cry from when they had Volter, and they had Zack Sabre Jr., and they had those guys than what they have now. The landscape is different, and the talent doesn't have 10 years to be big stars in the indies. If you're really good, you get signed quickly, and so that hurts.
Well, I mean, if you look at a lot of these shows, though, the bigger names are people are really under contract, whether it be New Japan, Impact. I mean, there is some Ring of Honor,
like a Mike Bailey,
AEW's talent that are doing these shows. So it's, I mean, if we're talking 11 months out of the year, 11 months and 29 days, I would say that the independents have definitely lost star power, but they get it WrestleMania weekend because those guys that work for major promotions work those shows. So I will say this: Dallas didn't have as many big marquee matches, but I've noticed in LA there is less deathmatch stuff. Like GCW doesn't have a lot of deathmatch stuff announced, which is very interesting. And they're not really doing the student shows with JCW. Well, not student, but the younger talent shows with JCW and LA Knights. Or LA Fights, yeah.
Yeah, for GCW, I will watch Bloodsport, and I will probably watch Spring Break. That's probably the extent of my GCW watching. And then I will probably watch I'll watch the Impact and New Japan show, and I'll watch the Ring of Honor show, and then I will probably pick one non-GCW related, maybe a collective indie show to watch as well. And that's probably what I'm gonna watch. But I think
Is
like
some of
not
this
having
on IWTV?
Prestige will be on IWTV. So the collective is all Prestige, which that card looks good, and I'll probably check that out, especially if you have IWTV membership.
and there's the Hitchcock Memorial.
Yeah, that's always a good show. Has a short comedy in it too, but
yeah,
there's usually good matches too.
Yeah, that's the show I'll probably check out. Is Sup gonna be there?
Sup Graps?
No,
Southern Underground Pro?
No. That's the thing about the collective this year. It's
Yeah.
GCW shows with the exception of Santino Bros. And then you have your GCW Jason shows like For the Culture and Effie's Big Gay Brunch, but there's no there. It's just and DDT is doing a show. But yeah, for the most part, it's just Santino Brothers and GCW.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think but I think like I think the indies in general, the we're now phase 2 of the U.S. Indies. If phase 1 was like from 2000, I guess phase 1 you could go back to the 90s, but post ECW, post WCW, phase 1 is like your Ring of Honors, and your CZWs, which are both still around but in different forms, and then companies like Jakara and Evolve. And I just think that's the kind of independent wrestling that I kind of grew up with, and what exists now is different. It's not
my belief that I've said many times is that I think the indie wrestling in let's say the early 2010s and the late 2000s was full of talent that was not properly evaluated by the wider industry, that is the bigger promotions including WWE. And from about 2014 onward, that talent set got more properly evaluated and are largely signed now, both by WWE because Triple H woke up, and by AEW, which launched.
Right, like the concept, like I was talking, like I just mentioned with WXW, like the idea that someone like Walter would just be like great for 10 years and not signed anywhere wouldn't happen now. Kevin Steen, everyone knowing that Kevin Steen is this very extremely talented wrestler, and he's just in Ring of Honor for 10 years, not getting a look at by WWE or even Impact.
And I would suggest that talent who are released from their major company like WWE are maybe evaluating that the indies are a less worthwhile place to work in too, because it's not, we had how many people who were released in 2021 and probably more in additional talent in 2022, and how many of those have gone on to work the indies? Very few. I mean, there's very few Cardonas who have who have taken it up and said, all right, I've been cut, but I'm going to go out there and make a huge run on the indies. Very few.
There's a bigger discussion on that though. It's like how they come up. They're former athletes. They weren't on the independents before. Like they're bodybuilders. They're fitness models. I think it's.
And in a lot of their cases, there's an AEW to scoop them up.
Yeah, and if they don't go to AEW, they just go on to move on to other things because I mean they like I said they weren't.
There are options in addition to the indies for them.
Yeah, I mean if you didn't do independent wrestling before you got signed, the chances of you going to do independent wrestling are, I mean Mojo Rawley never did, Nia Jax never did. They,
Right. It's a if you grow, if like all you see is WWE and nothing else, then the appeal of the indies, because you're not gonna, depending on who you are, like you're not gonna make money. You're not gonna make worthwhile money in a lot of cases.
Brandon and I can tell you it's a different lifestyle. like
right. And if you're used to coming from WWE, like let's say Mojo Rawley is an example of someone like Mojo Rawley is not going to make a ton of money on the indies. Yeah. Someone like Cardona, who really hustles and I think has like a level of drawing power, he probably works a lot, so he probably does make money off the indies.
Yeah, he does well.
But
he's one of one
Patreon too, I think.
Yeah, I mean but a lot of these people are not going to make a lot of money doing the indies. I don't know. Maybe is there less money in the indies than there used to be? Are there less? Again, the end of like Evolve, there are less in Ring of Honor becoming selective of who they're going to sign and things like that, and
I
having
think
exclusive
like as far as
contracts.
like making money, I don't think Evolve was a place where people made money as much as they got exposure that was valuable, and then
Right,
they worked local indies that most people have never heard of, and
right.
that's where they made several
Did
$100s in
you?
a booking.
Okay. I should have had this prepared. This is unrelated, but Dave reported that an indie in Ohio drew like 4,500 people
I
to a
saw
show
Lavi tweet about this.
last week. Yeah, it was a nostalgia show. I'm trying to think who was on it. I think
It
Sting
was
made an appearance.
it was like big time wrestling. So it's Bobby Fulton's fed. I think
Okay, it was
if I'm
big
not
time
wrong, I think
wrestling.
yeah. But it's the other. There's two big time wrestlings.
Yes,
There's
I know.
yeah. So
Right, but uh, I don't know. I haven't seen any video or photographs or anything like that. I'd be
but it
interested
was a
in.
nostalgia show. But then like
That's bigger than some Dynamite
yeah.
crowds.
How much does nostalgia really draw on the indies too? Like that's a rarity because I think like we're kind of getting out of the era of the 80s and 90s stars. You need them to draw a big crowd.
Yeah, it always depends on. I think it depends a lot on the indie, and it depends on what kind
Yeah.
of star you're bringing in. Are you bringing in, Tony Atlas? Or are you bringing in Bret Hart?
Yeah. I can tell you, being on the Northeast, I've been on more shows with Brutus the Bar Beefcake and Tony Atlas than most people.
Yeah. Right. So there's a level of nostalgia. And where you're drawing, like Rock and Roll Express, it probably still draws in certain parts of the country,
Yeah.
bringing them in. And, some people wrestle and some people don't. But yeah,
So
when we talk about.
before we get off of that the Ohio show, I'm trying to find my conversation with Lavi where he tweeted, and I'm struggling to find it, but that if you look at he found like the map of the gym that they ran, and the capacity is well under what somebody claimed the attendance was. It's like
It was also a
half.
convention too,
Well,
right? It was like a convention / show. Like most of those guys didn't wrestle on the show. So
yeah, they were wrestling. Yeah, like my big question, Brandon, was with that reported figure. I was like, where were they running? Because they would have to have run in a fairly large venue. Like it would be bigger than the venue that AEW ran the show in Troy, Ohio, in for sure. If they actually drew that attendance, and it was in Ohio in March, so it probably wasn't outside. So it has to be some level of indoor venue. So you'd have to be in like a smaller college basketball arena or minor league hockey arena or something like that. And they were in some town in Ohio I've never heard of before. So that was the number one thing that jumped in my head. It was like, well, where did they run? Because it wasn't like they were running at the a big building. It seems like, but
So
I don't know.
the capacity they were running at a gymnasium in Ohio. Bobby Fulton's world class professional big time wrestling group drew the largest indie crowd. This is the report. Drew the largest indie crowd of the year, 4,327 in Chillicothe, Ohio, for a Legends meet and greet show. Yada yada. All right, and then Lavi, the Shoemaker Center. The Shoemaker Center is the name of the location, and then Lavi Margolin found the map that says the capacity. Again, remember the attendance was supposedly 4,327. The capacity of this gym that they ran was 2,200.
yeah.
It appears to me it's the Shoemaker Center.
Count the parking attendants.
Yeah,
Count the concession stand. Like
I think I told
It
you.
does, yeah.
But did they count? Did you count everybody in the neighborhood, including the houses that were empty, where no one was home? You can get to it that way.
Yeah, it appears to be like a D2 or D3 maybe college basketball gymnasium. So seems very similar to the kind of college gymnasium that they had at my school, which is probably about.
Where was this
similar
number
capacity.
reported?
It was in the Observer, just in like the here or there, and Dave even said it reportedly drew that number. So I think Dave was skeptical of it himself, but he did publish it, and it seemed very high. I mean, there will be like lucha shows that run in like Laredo, Texas. that will draw like that many people. You know, they'll bring in like El Hijo del Santo or like these big Mexican stars. So those tend to be the biggest indie shows of the year. But I thought that was a huge. That'd be a huge, 40.
It seems the best indies though draw like 500. That seems to be the number, like of really successful. Like, I think they even like AEW. I know had a sold out crowd. I think it was probably higher than 500 this past weekend too. But I think that seems to be the number.
Mm-hmm.
That's the statistic I'm referencing.
Does he have a photo too?
I think so.
He says based on the venue and the photo.
There we go. But there's the photo of the venue for people watching on YouTube.
All right, so there's clearly a lot of people, but there's
a lot of people,
but it looks like about 2,000 people,
yes.
not 4,000.
Yeah. No doubt, this was a big indie crowd. 4,000, I don't think so. Okay.
Some old Carney numbers being passed around.
Okay. Anything else before we wrap up?
If the Tokyo Dome has a capacity of 75,000,
70,000 for the Inoki final,
then maybe that building does have a capacity of 4,000.
Hey, I drew thousands of people to the fire hall in my day.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to be working Forbidden Door, Brandon?
Working? No. Why would I be working?
You're not going to have You're not have a pre-show, a buy-in match with Yuji Nagata on the show?
No, I don't think that's happening.
Okay. Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. That's my podcast. You can find it on any place you can find your podcasts. It's also on YouTube, but you can find it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Podcasts. I talked to Trevor Dame. We talked about CM Punk and kind of reflecting on CM Punk's exit from AEW back at the All Out Presser. Obviously, a lot has changed since we recorded that podcast. But if you want to hear, but a lot of it is still relevant. So if people want to listen to that, they can check us out. Ever since we joined the Voices of Wrestling Network, things have really taken off for the show. I believe we're well into the top 100 wrestling podcasts on Chartable and on some of the other lists. I think we might have peaked in the 30s for one of our episodes. So things are going pretty well for us over at the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast. So if you want to check that out, you can find it, like I said, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts.
I mean, same old with me. I mean, I'll be this Saturday. I'll be in Elmira, appearing at a Wrestlemania watch-along party, taking some pictures, signing some autographs, and announcing some live demonstrations.
What are you trying to say?
Just be live demonstration matches, live demonstrations, not matches, live demonstrations.
Okay.
Yes.
Chris Gull's views and activities not necessarily represent those of Wrestlenomics LLC. Okay. Thanks everybody for listening. We will talk to you next week, Sunday at 11 a.m. Gullo will not be here, I believe.
Yeah, I will not.
It'll just be me and Jesse, I assume.
Are you working the weekend, Gullo? You working WrestleMania weekend?
No, I'm doing that appearance in Elmira. I think we're staying overnight. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we'll be here. With night one in the books of WrestleMania. And we will discuss whatever there is to discuss in the world of wrestling business, which I'm sure will be substantial. Talk to you then. Thanks for listening. Bye.